Hello, welcome to Pro Modeler. I'm Philip Flory. This particular build we're going to be doing is the new now Trumpeter SU-24M Fencer. Commonly known by its crews as the suitcase or flying suitcase, purely because of its sort of box shape. Now this is an incredibly large kit for its scale. Normally 148 you're thinking, yep, not so bad, but this is a particularly big aircraft. So if we have a look what we get in the box, as you'd expect with Trumpeter, it's a very nice, sturdy, thick box. Normally all the bags parts are separately bagged, all the sprues, but obviously I've had it already to have a bit of a closer look. First thing that strikes you is the sheer amount of actual decals you get with the kit. Obviously this one here is for weapons and things like that. Each one is called out, and we'll talk about the weapons in a short while. Same with the actual main ones themselves. Okay, they look a little bit thick if I'm honest, but they seem to be all perfectly in register and very nicely done. We've got some ones for the cockpit details and things like that on here, but obviously we can go through those a little bit later on. Certainly for the overall appearance, colourful charts, as you can imagine, as you can see here, very nicely done again. Obviously we're going to be doing in this particular scheme out of the box with the sort of the two-tone camo. That way we can do some very nice heavy weathered appearance to it. Usual thing with sort of Russian aircraft with the blue off blue underside, and then obviously we've got the newer sort of more up-to-date grey scheme that you can be seeing in at the moment. Another little sheet we get is obviously the weapons. Now this is one thing we'll talk about in a moment, but there we go. This is the call out for the weapons. It seems to be the standard thing that Trumpeter are doing now by including almost every weapon there actually is for them. So it's sort of a geometric fit. Some of these weapons obviously aren't going to go on this particular aircraft, but it does tend to be they sort of bag them all up and bung you every weapon. So it's going to be great for your spares box. Again, very nicely laid out. The instructions, as we've come to sort of know with Trumpeter, you've got your usual sort of your call out for your various things, and then we work our way through the build. They tend to be very clear, very sort of concise and easy to follow sort of instructions, pretty well laid out as you can imagine. Usual thing though, you want to make sure you've got all your holes drilled out and everything else like that, and looking through the entire build. But as I say, good idea to have a good flick through the instructions, as I always do to start with, to sort of familiarise yourself how the build period is going to work out, and then certainly you can work out drying time, so when things are drying you can move on and do other bits, perhaps like weapons, things like that, very else. But as you can see, the last sort of 6 pages here is just purely about doing the weapons, and obviously you've got a loadout chart on the back to show you about that as well. So basically, in the kit, as you can imagine, this box is absolutely stuffed full with plastic. We've got the wing sections here. It's nice to note that obviously Trumpeter a few years ago used to be criticised quite heavily for very heavy riveting. Obviously Russian aircraft are very heavily riveted anyway, but now, this day and age, they sort of learnt the lesson from it. This is quite fine, nice riveting detail, seems to be very nicely laid out. Obviously I'm not an expert on this particular aircraft, and I'm not going to go around counting rivets for 1 minute at all, but it all looks to be very, very nice to me. As you work your way through the sprues, you quickly learn that obviously the front section of the aircraft is going to be separate from the rest of it. So there again, nicely riveted. We've got a small seam line running down underneath here, which is very hard because obviously you're injecting from the bottom, top and sides all in one. So sometimes you get a little seam where it comes together. We've got that. We'll take care of that anyway. Nice little section there for the radar. On the nose we can see. Cockpit itself, now the aftermarket guys are out already in force doing new things for these things. Certainly you can pick up resin seats for everything else. We're going to do this one pretty much out of the box with a little bit of scratch building to help some areas. Quite basic, the cockpit, and probably is worth getting a replacement one if one came along, if you're going to have the canopy open. Tails again, as you can see, this is an area which is a small problem with the kit we'll talk about afterwards, but say nicely detailed. It's nice to have the actual rudder as a separate part so we can have it showing things like that. Certainly the flaps and everything else. A couple of big parts you can see here. This is the actual area that's going to hold that swept wing gear system. There again, something we'll talk about quite in detail. And as I say, we can see the rear mounted for the engines. There again, there's a small problem with that one. Basically, if you're going to go around and criticise the kit, there's a few little errors with it. Certainly the tail section with the nozzles, they're too far apart, things like that. And the intakes are a little bit funny as well. But by using sort of covers, FOD covers and engine covers, you can get rid of most of the problems on it. We spoke about it before, but here's your weapon sets. We've got two sheets of everything. So we've got two there. We've got a specific one here. This is for the fuel tanks. There's a seam line that runs down the side, and when you look at them, you think, you know, somebody's forgot to fill the seam line in. It does actually run down the side. So it's not so much people's building, but as you can imagine, as you can see, we go on and on and on with various weapons. So basically you've got everything from freefall bombs, rocket pods, and everything else, and some of the larger missiles as well. So very, very concise. Down here we've got a nice little touch. We've got protected. These are the actual areas for around about the flaps and slats. They're not that well protected because they're quite warped under this. There's something we're going to have to take care of, but it's nice to see that the packaging keeps them somewhat safe. Some more of the finer details. This is for the undercarriage and the activators and things like that. As I say, there again, nicely done. Looking over the kit, there's no real massive problem with ejector pin marks and things like that. Everything seems to be perfectly in there. There's no sign of any flash, and by flash we mean sort of leakage, if you like, of when the two plates come together. Sometimes you get it on the older kits, but again, no problem with this kit at all. No section is one piece like that. Obviously the way it's moulded, sometimes you get little seam marks down there, but they won't show with a little bit of a rub down. And obviously there's been a lot of talk about, is the nose the right shape? Certainly looks like it to me. Next up we get this little box, which is a lovely touch for this. So if we just get this out, and in here, you might have been wondering, is where is the actual main fuselage? Well, here it is. There again, nicely done, lovely details, some very, very nice riveting and things like that. Obviously, we'll show you a little bit later on the close-ups. Obviously, it's a big section. Got some reinforcing in here, which is quite a nice touch to keep it all apart. Okay, so we've got two of those. The seats, here we are. This is just sprues for the seats. Very nicely detailed for the scale as well, so that's quite nice. As I say, talked about resin ones, but you don't need to, you know, rush out and buy resin, but it certainly would liven up the cockpit a little bit. Engines as well, that nicely done, and obviously we've got wheel hubs as well, because as you might expect on a kit like this, the wheels are in fact rubber, so we'll be distressing them and making them look a little bit older than they are and things like that. So we've got them, and also another nice little touch is that the actual swept wing area as it goes in, the gloves type, the holders are made of rubber as well. Here we got the clear parts, as again, very nicely cleared, quite thin as well, so no problem at all. Split rear cockpit, as you'd imagine, because both doors lift up. We've got various instrument decals and things like that, and noses for a lot of the weapons, which are obviously in clear, so that's those. And the last little nice touch is that we've actually got white metal undercarriage, something you don't see on many kits in 1/48 scale. 1/32 tend to be, you know, really the standard, but not in 1/48 certainly. So there we go, white metal undercarriage, which is quite a nice touch. A lot of those ones for that undercarriage are strengthening parts. So what happens is that you build the gear, and then you go along and put the plastic parts around the white metal to strengthen it up. So there we go. So you get a nice sturdy box. This braces it all apart and keeps it all open and everything else like that. Should be a great build. As I said before, we're going to focus a lot of this work on actually the weathering. So the build itself will follow the build right the way through. But what I'm going to show you really is how to bleach and weather and give a really a weathered, heavy sort of faded out chipping, things like that look to your Russian aircraft. Okay then, so like with all the good builds, we're going to start with the cockpit area first. Now I've already got the tub out, and we've got this part which is G1 fitted in here already, and we've put the sticks in and just cleaned it up. As I said, it's quite a basic cockpit, but all in all, you know, it's going to serve our purpose quite well. Then we've got this clear part, which is M16. Quite a strange way of doing it. So what we're actually going to do in a moment, we'll show you about painting it up and getting the bits. But what we can do is we can do a lot of the little sub-assemblies to start with, and as they're drying then, well, obviously we can move on to doing a little bit of painting. So that's pretty straightforward for a cockpit, and probably one of the quickest ones you're going to do. The seats, on the other hand, are quite nicely detailed. So actually what we've got, let me bring these parts over here, we've actually got in here, I'll bring you in a touch, you've got the main seat base itself, and then we've got a backing part. So what we do, the backing basically just sits on the top, and that's going to click in, or should click in, something just like so. There we go, that sits in. So we're just going to get a little bit of glue. I'm just going to run it on the sides and let the capillary action pull up and spread about. Okay, and then what we can do, we can put the armrests or the side of the seats in. So we just put a drop of glue on each side. And we'll put these J1 and J2 parts actually up and fit them in. Same again, quite a nice little fit, touch of glue. Okay, we'll just move around gently to the other side. Okay, we can get those up as well. Just make sure they sit all the way in, otherwise you might have some trouble with them fitting. Okay, now actually what we've got in here is the little seat cover itself. We can paint that as a separate and we'll put that in afterwards. So that's quite nicely done. Then we've done the other one as well, so both of those are done. So we can just pop those out of the way. The head box as well, pretty straightforward. So we're just going to use the tiniest amount of glue and just sit those in together. There again, there's a little cushion type cover that goes on that as well. So we're not going to worry about that for the moment. We'll come back and deal with that afterwards. So what we do is get a bit of glue just on the go on that, and we can leave that to one side. Now the cockpit itself, which is the main parts here, you know, obviously we've got a choice. You can either attach them direct onto the side like that and then put them together, or you can have two halves together, okay, something like so, like this, and then we have the two halves of the fuselage and it plugs in straight away, just in like, if we have the right way up, in like this. Now you're never going to get a perfect seam no matter which way you do it, so what I tend to do is I tend to do mine solid round and then plug them in afterwards. I know a lot of people will come along and they'll put two halves in like this and work it up, but you're still going to have the same amount of filling as you would do any other way, unless it's a really bad join, and this one, to be honest, isn't a bad join. I can get away with that. But what a lot of people worry about is the actual step you'll get between the two, but I've measured them up and it's not so bad on this kit. Sometimes it's quite worth gluing these parts together just like that and then bringing it together as a whole. As I said, personal choice if you wanted to do it that way or do it afterwards. If you have got a big noticeable step occurring on this, then it's well worth doing it now. If you haven't, like this one's not too bad, but we've got a join, then obviously we can take care of that with a little bit of filler. So anyway, next part we sort of moved on with, we did the wheel well, which is very straightforward. You basically got D2, D7, H50, H51 and H52, and it just makes up a simple box. Now this is going to then fit to the underside of the, to the actual cockpit tub. Pretty straightforward, just like so. Okay, so what we can do that now, and we're going to paint all these up afterwards. So we can get this sitting on here. Okay, and then what we'll do, we just touch a little bit front and rear and let the capillary action pull itself down. Okay, just like so. So we'll leave that to stand for one moment. The other little bit that we've got on with, when you move on to section 4, we've got the refueling probe, which is going to come up very simple. Two halves go together. Now the way I did this is I actually put it in here first, pushed it in, then glued it all into position as is, and that saves a lot of sort of farting around and trying to get it all to fit and everything else like that. So that's in now, very straightforward. So that bit can be drying and off to one side. Next up, you've basically got number 5 on your list, and that is for the engine. Now there again, as these bits are all dry, it's great because you can move on. So very straightforward. Obviously I'm going to use pod covers for these for covering up the engine, so I'm not going to worry about painting them as such, but obviously if you wanted to come along and have the engine shown, you might want to paint these as little bits of separate. So what we're going to do, we're just going to start with the back. Now my one has got quite a bit of what we call release agent on. Now release agent is a oily type substance. Let me put this side on. And what that actually does is just helps it all pull away from the mould. So it's a little bit oily to the touch. Now one way you can do is put it in a little bit of soapy water, give it a wash around, take it out, let it air dry, towel and air dry, and you'll be good to go. But it is quite noticeable on these. So we got that one on like this, and then what we can do is we can just put a little bit of glue on the top part, and then oops, this section fits on just like so. Give a dab of glue here and there just to hold it into place. Okay, so then once you got that one on, then obviously we've got an option, so you can have the nozzles open or closed. So in this one here we've got it as open, and then that will obviously fit over just like so, giving you a nozzle effect just like that, okay, on the close-up. Or you can have it as the nozzle somewhat closed, which will give us this type of effect. So between the two you can see exactly how it's going to be if you want it as, I say, open nozzle or closed nozzle, just like that. So it depends really if you're going to have it down in the powered down where the nozzle's normally open like this, or if you're going to be using fold covers and things like that, then obviously you're not going to worry about this anyway. But once that is basically sat on, then you've got the outer cover. It's just going to come along here, okay, and that is going to sit, giving us something like this type of effect just on the end. So it's pretty straightforward, and as I say, quite a loose fit, but we'll come around and take care of those properly a little bit later on. So once you've got the tail section all done just like that, we've got here, which is, just move forward on the listing here. Not worried about the gear section, so obviously we've got various things about the radar and the gear on the list here. We're not worried about those, as I say. So what we're going to do is get on with this box section, because these things can all be drying, as I said. So not worrying about any hoses. So obviously you've got parts H49, H8 and H48. They are basically just hoses and things, and as I say, we're not worried. So we can pinch these two parts together, which is E20 and E30, and we're going to drop a bit of glue just down in the middle and let the capillary action do all the work and pull that down to stick those parts just like so. So we're just going to come in a touch from the top, make sure we've got glue down in there, clamp them just to hold them tight just for the moment. Now underside we've got a couple of small little ejector pin marks in here, which you can take care of if you wanted to. You can just sand them out very, very lightly, but they are on all areas where they're not going to be very noticeable, so I wouldn't worry about it too much, because we've got a centre box down here. But most of them are all nicely situated out of the way, and they're very, very shallow, so it won't take much to get rid of them anyway. So anyway, that's those bits in. And what we can do is, you've got your end part, which is going to sit just in here. This is number F20. As I say, it's a great fit, because they actually click in at that tight a fit, so we can get them in. In fact, they're so tight a fit, I can't get it in. There we go, so that sits in just like so. So what we'll do, we'll give that a touch of glue. As I say, just touch and let it flow, let the capillary action do all the work. Okay, once you've got it in there a little bit, you can give it a bit of a squeeze, and it will usually push in just a little bit tighter. But that's the bay starting to come together. Then obviously we've got the centre section, which is going to just drop in. Might need it to, that's it, a little bit of a click to get that to go. There again, bits of glue running in the top, and down this back edge. Okay, just a touch around the bottom if needed. Okay, just put a touch more in there. Then we've got the actual side parts of those to go on. So if we just clip them out, just need to get those out. So you've got 16 and 18, which are more areas, which is basically just walling inside the wheel well. So I'll just quickly trim them off with a knife. So just a bit of a file to make sure they've got a nice flat, firm fitting to sit to. Okay, then these will just hopefully slide in, just like so. Okay, so that's one going in. So there again, tap, let the glue do all the work. Once it's in, we're just going to give it another small little nudge to make sure it's all in there good. Same on the other side. So Slide him in. Okay, in with the glue. Bit of a nudge to make sure it's all in. There we go, quite happy with that one. Now, obviously this is a swing wing fighter. Now the thing with that, a lot of time, there's obviously a big mechanism in to make them sort of, you know, a cog system with most of them. This is no different, although it's on quite a heavy duty scale. So we've got two cogs, which are going to fit in just like that. And then we lock them in together. They should lock. Don't appear to want to. Sorry, got them the wrong way, that might help. There we go, that's those locked in. And then over the top. Now if you are wanting this to be a working type of model with variable geometry wings, make sure with your gluing. So what I tend to do, glued it on the inside, hold them down. All we're going to do is just make sure they're freewheeling, the actual cogs. So they're just like that, whilst that glue is taking effect, and making sure it doesn't squish up. So every now and again, just give it a rotation. And if it is slightly, you know, not going brilliantly, then you can actually usually free it up by just keep spinning it around for a minute whilst the glue's drying. But that's moving very, very nicely. Very happy with that. So now what we can do, we can turn this over to the rear. Then we've actually got these three tabs just down here. They're going to locate to these here. So we're going to put plenty of glue around those. On there. Okay, and we're just going to line those all up together. Give them a good old push, and just to make sure, we're just going to come in as far as we can. Just get a touch more glue down in there into those pylons. Happy with all that is. Same along this front area as well. And it will just make this to a very nice strong box section, because obviously you've got the gear and the wings are all going to be hanging off of this one area. So we just want it to be quite nice and strong. Okay, a bit of a push down. Just like so, just to make sure we're all happy. Still got moving on the cogs there, so that's no problem. Now we have got various points to go on this one. You might be able to see on the instructions. Obviously we've got this tubing work we can put in afterwards, and obviously we've got some more little bits going on in here. But all of those parts we can take care of afterwards. So now we've got the main assembly sort of done to it. If we flick across to the other side, you can see at step 10 of actually getting all the sections and bringing them together. The one thing you'll notice, as I mentioned it in the review, you might have a small little seam line running on the corner as it goes down. What I tend to do is take a very fine file. So if you've got one of our multi-files, I'm just going to use the pink side. Okay, I'm just going to lightly rub out that seam line. Okay, because you don't want a really strong coarse grit to do this, otherwise you're going to tear up all that lovely detail. But what this will do, we just blend in the actual working area of where the two moulds came together. So you should get away with it. Now, obviously we can pop round and re-rivet afterwards if we do sand any out, but I'm hoping we're going to be pretty much okay and not worry about it too much. So we just got these bits just to do in here. So we just sand them off, and we're just checking for any imperfections anywhere else. See, the seam line runs on the inside of this one down here, but it runs basically along here right the way down the edge. Then if you use one of the polishing ones, this is a great way to actually just get rid of that seam line. And there we go, that takes care of that one. Okay, we can do the same on the other side. So we're having a good look. It's pretty more noticeable. This will be your port side of the model. So there we go. We'll just sand that one away. Let's see how that is. And on this front edge, just a touch. So if you went in with something too strong, what will happen is you're just going to spend all your time trying to sand out the marks in from sanding that you've made, rather than out the panel lines, because they're quite fine. Okay, so that's just coming down there nicely. Good old buff up. You can flip to the white side if you've got one of these, and this will get rid of everything and make it all nice and glossy again. And there we go. Totally happy with that. No problems at all around that edge. So just give it a bit of a gloss up. Okay, happy with those. So if we have a look now how this is all going to fit, and really this is just for sort of test fitting purposes. So actually what should happen is it should just drop through. We can see all our wheel well in there, no problem at all. It's all lining up, quite happy with that. It comes through. Obviously we can still see the gearing off of the wings is all still free moving as well, so we're all happy with that. Okay, we just pop the other side in to test fit. How it's all going to, let's see, swivel in. And obviously we're going to have to play with fittings and getting this all to line in and all bits like that. But it just makes sure it will go, and it does fit in there very, very nicely, just like so. So by the time we get the engine set in there as well, then we can have a look at doing this front section once we get the parts together. Something in like this, and it'll start to give you a sense of scale how big this thing's going to be. So we're going to totally let these bits dry off, just finish off these engines area up here at the back, and what we can do, we can start detailing, painting, adding little bits of wire if needed and bits and pieces, certainly to the cockpit, to the wheel wells, everything else. Do some painting around, because painting this as a separate section will be easier than doing it sort of all when it's in there together. Add all that piping we need to do, and then we can bring the two halves together.